At 55, the man who conquered the global box office for 30 years has finally met an enemy he cannot punch, charm, or outrun. Will Smith spent 3 decades building a billion-dollar monument to his own perfection, but in a single live interview, that monument was reduced to ash. As Jada Pinkett Smith sat before a nodding audience, she didn't just share her truth. She systematically dismantled the dignity of the man who once had the world in the palm of his hand. The Fresh Prince is no longer a hero. He is a ghost standing on the edge of a cliff, while the woman he calls his anchor is the one handing him a map to the void. She didn't just break the rules of a marriage. She broke a man. To understand the wreckage, you have to look at the pedestal. In the early 1990s, Will Smith was the undisputed king of the world. He was the kid from West Philly who turned a sitcom into a billion-dollar legacy. He was the face of the American blockbuster, the man who saved the planet from aliens every July 4th, and the most bankable star in the history of cinema. He was charming, he was untouchable, and he was safe. Beside him was Jada Pinkett, the edgy, fierce girl from Baltimore who seemed like the perfect grounding force for his meteoric ascent. Together, they weren't just a couple. They were a corporate entity worth hundreds of millions of dollars. They were the blueprint for the power couple, projecting an image of unshakable stability in an industry built on shifting sand. But every monument has a crack in the foundation, and their foundation was built on a terrifying paradox. While Will was obsessed with the golden illusion of perfection, Jada was quietly harboring a root wound that would eventually bleed out into the public eye. She admitted in her own memoir that she felt invisible in the shadow of his massive fame. She didn't want to be a queen. She wanted to be a martyr. And as the decades rolled on, she realized that the most effective way to be seen was to set the throne on fire while he was still sitting on it. The shattering began in July 2020 at a piece of furniture that has become a symbol of modern domestic horror, the red table. The world sat in stunned silence as Jada brought her husband onto her talk show to discuss her entanglement with August Alsina, a singer who was not only 20 years her junior, but was also a close friend of her son, Jaden. This wasn't just an affair. It was a predatory power dynamic disguised as healing. She claimed her maternal instincts were what drew her to him, that she wanted to fix a broken young man who was struggling with drug addiction and health issues. She looked Will Smith directly in his tear-filled eyes and told the world she slept with her son's friend because she had a weakness for mending broken people. The irony was lethal. While she was busy mending a 20-year-old in rehab, she was systematically breaking the strongest man in Hollywood. The light didn't just leave Will's eyes that day. It was sucked out by a vacuum of public emasculation. He sat there doing the mental gymnastics of a man desperate to preserve a brand, nodding along as she rebranded infidelity as self-discovery. It was the birth of a meme that would haunt him forever, turning the Fresh Prince into the face of a humiliated husband. But the red table was just the dress rehearsal. The real explosion happened on March 27th, 2022, on the most prestigious stage on Earth. When Chris Rock made a joke about Jada's shaved head, the world didn't just see a slap, they saw a nervous breakdown in real time. Will Smith didn't hit Chris Rock for a joke. He hit Chris Rock because he couldn't hit his wife. He was a man drowning in years of pent-up resentment, anger, and the suffocating pressure of having to defend a woman who had spent the last 2 years publicly mocking his dignity. He stood on that stage screaming, "Keep my wife's name out your fifth mouth." And for a fleeting second, he thought he was reclaiming his honor. But the aftermath was a disaster. Hollywood, the very machine that fed him, turned its back. He was banned, he was shunned, and he was left alone with the person who caused the explosion in the first place. And that is when Jada Pinkett Smith decided to deliver the final blow. Fast forward to her current book tour for Worthy. Jada didn't just tell her truth, she weaponized it to sell copies. She revealed that she and Will had been living entirely separate lives since 2016. For 7 years, they had been a ghost couple maintaining a fraudulent public image while living in different houses. She admitted that by the time the Oscar slap happened, they were so far apart that she was shocked he even called her his wife on stage. But then came the most degenerate claim of all, the one that proves we are dealing with a serial narcissist. In a conference filled with women who cheered for her every word, Jada claimed that she admitted to the affair on the Red Table Talk for Will. She said she threw herself into the fire and played the villain to help mend Will's ego. Think about the level of psychological manipulation required to frame public humiliation as an act of service. She tried to self-impose an ego death on her husband, a brutal stripping away of his identity, and then had the audacity to call it love. She sat there, justifying predatory behavior with a 20-year-old by calling it self-love, and the audience glazed her for it. They shouted, "Go girl," and "Preach sister," as she described how she torpedoed her husband's mental health to find her own light. It was a rallying speech for degeneracy, a church of the self, where the only God is the woman on the stage and the only sacrifice is the man in the front row. The reaction of that audience is perhaps the most disturbing part of the entire saga. It reveals a larger problem within Hollywood culture, the glorification of speaking your truth, even when that truth is a blunt instrument used to bash your partner's head in. They endorsed a behavior that, if the roles were reversed, would have led to an immediate criminal investigation. If a 50-year-old man had taken a 20-year-old girl in drug rehab into his home and fixed her by sleeping with her, he would be behind bars. But Jada Pinkett Smith is treated as a goddess of empowerment. She knows her audience. She knows they won't dissent. She knows that in the plastic fake culture of California, you can justify any sin as long as you use the right vocabulary of wellness and healing. She is playing 5D chess with a man who is still playing checkers. Will Smith is bending reality, performing a repertoire of reputation management, trying to convince the world that all is good. But you can see the soul leaving his body in every photo. It is a slow, agonizing drowning, and his anchor is the one holding his head under the water. Now look at the fallout of his career. Will Smith used to be the guy everyone wanted to be. Now he's the guy everyone pities. His film comebacks have been met with a collective shrug. His attempts to return to music are labeled as cringe. He performs live to audiences that don't clap, and he resorts to creating AI-generated crowds in his videos just to simulate the feeling of being loved. It is pathetic, it is heartbreaking, and it is a direct result of the toxic domestic environment he refuses to leave. He is a multi-millionaire celebrity with more fame than most people can imagine, yet he is the most lonely man on the planet. He is trapped in a feedback loop of Hollywood degeneracy, where people do these things on purpose just to stay relevant, to stay in the headlines, and to sell a few more books. Jada is literally using her husband's public humiliation as a marketing strategy. She is throwing him under 700 buses with spikes underneath them, and then asking the public to pay for the ticket to watch. This is the culture of Hollywood that people don't talk about enough. Everything is plastic, everything is fake, and everything is up for sale, even your dignity. Will Smith is a symptom of a larger disease. He is a man who believed the lie that he had to be perfect, and now that the lie has been exposed, he doesn't know how to exist as a human being. He has become a puppet in a game where the rules are written by a narcissist who views him as a project, not a partner. At minimum, Jada Pinkett Smith is a manipulative serial narcissist. At worst, she is a spiritual predator sent to dismantle one of the most successful men in history just to see if she can. You can see it in the way she smiles when he's suffering. You can see it in the way she refuses to give him the one thing he actually needs, the privacy of a quiet exit. The twilight angle of this story is the most depressing. We are seeing the SCHU, the fading years of a legend, being defined not by his work, but by his shame. Will Smith should be in the statesman phase of his career, mentoring the next generation and collecting lifetime achievement awards. Instead, he's a cautionary tale about what happens when you let a narcissist take the wheel of your life. He is performing mental gymnastics to cover for her reputation, managing a house that is already burned down. It is a mental health crisis that the world is treating as entertainment. We need to stop propping these people up as gods. They are broken, they are flawed, and in the case of the Smith family, they are dangerously toxic. The Hollywood machine eats its own, and right now Jada is leading the feast. It is time to tell the truth about this nonsense. Hollywood has spent years glorifying this kind of behavior, calling it unconventional or modern marriage. But there is nothing modern about disrespect. There is nothing modern about predatory age gaps and drug rehab trysts. There is nothing modern about publicly embarrassing the father of your children to boost your book sales. It is just old-fashioned cruelty dressed up in a designer coat and a red table set. We are witnessing the ultimate ego death of Will Smith. But it wasn't a choice he made on a spiritual retreat. It was a murder-suicide of a reputation committed by the person who was supposed to protect it. If you look into the eyes of Will Smith today, you see a man who is no longer there. He has become a ghost in his own life, a background character in the Jada Show. He is doing music videos with AI fans because the real world has stopped cheering. He is making movies that nobody watches because the America's sweetheart charm was slapped off his face in 2022. And Jada is thriving in the chaos. She loves the villain role. She loves the I banged a kid to save my husband's ego narrative because it makes her the center of every conversation. She is the predator who convinced the world she was the prey. It is a masterclass in manipulation, and Will Smith is the primary victim. Hollywood is a whorehouse of the soul. People move out there with dreams, and they leave with scars. We see it time and time again with these celebrity couples who turn their private pain into public profit. It is a symptom of a larger, deep-seated problem in our culture where we value engagement over empathy. Jada Pinkett Smith knows that every time she says something absurd about Will, her name trends. She knows that every time she throws him under a bus, the cameras turn toward her. She is addicted to the attention, and Will is the currency she uses to pay for it. It is the most expensive and most public divorce that never happened. They're technically married, but the bond is gone. All that's left is a legal contract and a set of talking points. Will Smith needs to wake up. He needs to stop the mental gymnastics. He needs to realize that you cannot fix someone who is using you as a footstool for their own ascent. He needs to walk away, not for his career, but for his life. Because if he stays in this cycle, the next headline won't be about a book. It will be an obituary for a spirit that was broken in broad daylight. We need to stop glazing these celebrities and start calling out this behavior for what it is. Toxic, degenerate, and profoundly disrespectful. Jada Pinkett Smith isn't a hero for speaking her truth. She's a person who exploited a vulnerable man and then spent the next decade mocking him for falling for it. The story of Will and Jada is the ultimate core paradox of our time. The perfect couple who were actually a separated disaster. The heroic husband who became the public cuckold. The maternal healer who was actually a predatory narcissist. It is a script that no screenwriter would dare to write because it's too bleak. But in the world of Hollywood, the truth is always stranger and much more cruel than the fiction. We are watching the end of an era, the death of a titan, and the birth of a new kind of celebrity monster, the one who destroys their own family just to stay relevant. I hope Will Smith is safe. I hope he isn't thinking dark thoughts. I hope he finds a way to reclaim his name from the mouth of a woman who has used it as a punchline for 7 years. But looking at the current landscape, it seems the storm is just beginning. Jada isn't done. She has more books to sell, more conferences to attend, and more buses to throw him under. And as long as the world keeps nodding along to her preach, she will keep pulling the trigger. This is the reality of the Hollywood dream. It always ends in a nightmare, and the person screaming the loudest is usually the one who started the fire. Will Smith's legacy should have been one of triumph. He broke barriers for black actors. He became a global ambassador for American culture. He made us laugh when we were kids, and he made us cry when he played a father, struggling to survive in the pursuit of happiness. That man deserved a graceful exit. He deserved a legacy of respect. But instead, he is being remembered for a slap and a wife who won't let him breathe. It is the most tragic downfall in the history of entertainment, not because he lost his talent, but because he lost his self-worth. He traded his dignity for a power couple brand that was a lie from the very beginning. So when you see Jada Pinkett Smith on your screen, don't see a woman of empowerment. See a woman who participated in the destruction of a human spirit for profit. Don't see a red table of healing. See a slaughterhouse of a reputation. And when you see Will Smith, don't see a movie star. See a man who needs a way out of a house of mirrors. Hollywood is plastic. Everything is for sale. And the stories we are told are just the golden illusion used to hide the shattering reality of the people behind the curtain. The mask has slipped, and what's underneath is the most chilling drama Hollywood has ever produced. As we look at the trajectory of Will Smith's film career, we see a man who is desperately trying to find a footing that no longer exists. The industry has moved on, but not because he isn't talented. They've moved on because the Will Smith brand has become too heavy to carry. It's a brand of pity. It's a brand of the guy who got embarrassed by his wife. And in the world of alpha male blockbuster stars, pity is a death sentence. Jada's latest revelations have ensured that every time he tries to launch a comeback, the conversation returns to 2016. Every time he tries to be a hero, people remember the entanglement. Every time he tries to be serious, they remember the slap. She has effectively poisoned the well of his future. And the most degeneracy part of it all is that she claims she did it for him. It is the ultimate gaslighting of an entire planet. Hollywood glorifies the damaged and the dark, but it has no room for the truly broken. Will Smith is currently too broken for the big screen. He is a man performing to an empty room, creating AI fans because the real world is too busy reading Jada's book and laughing at his expense. It is a symptom of a larger cultural rot. We feed on this pain. We subscribe to the Discord to talk about the latest tea. We like and subscribe to see the next tragedy unfold. We are all part of the machine that is eating Will Smith alive. But maybe, just maybe, by calling it out, we can start to see the plastic for what it is. Maybe we can stop propping up the narcissists and start valuing the truth, even when the truth is ugly, even when the truth is cringe, and even when the truth means realizing that our heroes were never who we thought they were. The army to take over Hollywood must keep growing because the degeneracy is winning. We are watching the destruction of a legend in real time, and it's being sold as worthy content. Join the mission, a dissent against the narrative. Don't let the nodding audiences of book tours define what a relationship should look like. Don't let the red table be the judge of what is right and wrong. Stand up for the truth. Even if the truth is that your favorite movie star is a victim of the very life he chose to lead. Will Smith is in a beautiful place, she says. No legal plans for divorce, she says. But we all know that the most beautiful place in Jada's world is a place where Will Smith is silent and she is the only one with a microphone. The storm is here, the buses are lined up, and the spikes are sharp. I just hope Will Smith finds a way to jump off before the next one hits. In the final analysis, Jada Pinkett Smith is the most effective director in Will Smith's career. She directed his rise, she directed his public image, and now she is directing his demise. She has written a script where she is the complex, misunderstood protagonist, and he is the collateral damage. And in a town that loves a good story, she is winning an Oscar for her performance as the worthy wife. But to those of us watching from the outside, the ones who aren't blinded by the plastic and the glam, the story is much simpler. It's a story of a man who loved too much and a woman who loved herself more than anything else. It's a story of a titan brought down not by a rival or a monster, but by a red table and a book deal. It's the most Hollywood ending imaginable. Everything is fake. Everyone is hurting, and the credits are rolling over the sound of a woman's voice explaining why she had to destroy it all to find herself. Will Smith, if you're listening, leave the table. Walk away from the buses. Find the man you were before the entanglement, before the slap, before the separate houses. Find the Fresh Prince who didn't need a mask to be seen. Because as long as you're in her movie, you're always going to be the guy who loses in the end. And the world doesn't need to see another remake of that story. We've seen enough. We've witnessed enough. The mask is gone. The truth is out. And it's the most depressing thing Hollywood has ever put on screen. Join the movement, talk about the theories, and remember that behind the golden illusion is a shattering reality that the headlines will never truly tell. We're taking over Hollywood one truth at a time. Like, subscribe and stay safe out there. The storm isn't over yet.